My reflection on my RC1000 course. Hi, my name is Aaron Walters. I'm a freshman here at App State. My major is exercise science. I've always been interested in the medical field. I have many interests, as you can see, but my true passion relates to rap and hip hop. So we were asked for a personal practice, so I thought I would make rap and hip hop my personal practice. So at first we had to do a research paper. There's the abstract to my research paper, which gives you a little introduction about everything. Basically, I just talk about the true influence that rap and hip hop has. There are some assumptions that really isn't true about the influence. So I really base on the positive influence that it has through being a form of expression, and which could be used in therapeutic sessions as well. There's a link to my research paper as well. I went back and read my research paper. Overall, I'm satisfied with how my paper represents my research, my learning, and thinking on rap and hip hop. I feel like the time and effort I put into my paper stood out. Throughout my argumentative essay, I spread my knowledge on rap and hip hop through a smooth, authoritative tone. I also share every perspective that could make my argument stronger. My coffee house was happy with the work that I made, and also my professor. In our class meetings at first, there was a lot of critiquing comments. As time progressed, I noticed they would say nothing but compliments. I think this because I completed the full draft earlier than all of my classmates. By me doing this, I was using an example to help others. I had so much time to revise and improve, so then I could appear even better to my peers. There were, in this paper, I feel that I done good, but I feel that I didn't reach every goal. There were 3 goals that I feel like I knocked out of the park. Writing with a strong voice and authority, developing metacognition of one's own academic writing, generating ideas, and draft, revise, edit, and proofread recursively, consciously, and effectively. In my writing, I wrote with strong, informative statements to help myself create a sense of credibility due to my knowledge of rap and hip hop. My paper started out with a strong, authoritative tone. As my paper progressed, I gained more control of not only my standpoint, but also my paper. There were many times that I had to do multiple drafts and reread. Writing is a process that you must be patient with. When going through it, you have to look back at what you wrote and be very judgmental on yourself. I would question multiple things like what each statement actually means, how does it relate to my perspective, and many other questions. I would think of anything that could make my argument look weak and face those problems and make it stronger. Our research paper, we then had to turn to a podcast. A podcast is so much different than a paper. There was a lot of elements involved in such a strong transition between the two. First, for me, it was understanding the point of a podcast and understanding what makes a podcast impactful to the audience. So then I had to think of my intended and target audience outside of my professor. I thought of many of them, and none of them made sense at first. And then I slimmed it down to high school students. With writing to a professor, all you have to do is write a normal, informative, argumentative, strong essay. But high school students are much different. A professor likes assignments that are creative, intelligent, while being persuasive and informing. High school students have a low attention span, and they like anything interesting, fun, and relative. So then you begin to think, what in my research would keep my target audience's attention? So then I thought I was just a high school student. What interests me most in my own paper? That got me thinking of the misogyny in rap and hip hop. Us taking rap and hip hop for granted, and what rap and hip hop truly is. You can see here, there's a part that I include that talks about the transition and what all that I included more. There was a lot that I didn't include, and that was due to my target audience. Overall, my podcast isn't based not only due to the sound quality, but also on my inexperience on podcasts, whether it be listening or creating them. But the goals I feel like I knocked it apart would be creating a sense of authority, using writing for learning, thinking, and communicating, producing text in various genres. I use my writing and text to create a podcast, which is a different genre. I use my writing to inform my target audience through a podcast that I presented in front of a high school class. I use the writing through a podcast to communicate to high school students. I use my writing to help think how I should present this podcast to keep attention of high school students. I used the tone in the podcast and also in person that was straightforward and in control. I used my learning and intelligence through my research to conduct a great presentation that resulted in great responses from high school students. I say this because I was in front of a class of about 20 and 17 replied. The comments I got was sounding like, I enjoyed your podcast, I loved the interviews, and I felt interested. There's a link to my podcast if you would like to listen to that. Here's some closing thoughts that I have on how proud I am about RC1000 and my transfer as well. Thank you for listening.